So, Dr. Habeck, Professor Ammendinger, Professor Sterner, Ms. Reiterer, and Mr. Uschitz. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Futurium. My name is Stefan Wein. I am the director of this house. Climate change, is technology the solution or is it the problem? So that's the title of today's event, and that is actually a decent question. On the one side, technology, despite all the bad things that we think doesn't actually live outside our own actions. Technology will become a problem or a solution, will only become that if we actually let it be that way and our own responsibility. The use of technology is constantly both Jana's head, so it brings solutions to certain problems, but also brings problems that we wouldn't have had beforehand. We just need to think of the digitalization and everything that comes along with that. Innovation is never just a good thing or a bad thing. To use Josef Schuby, it's a creative destruction of the current economical structure that will always bring a new structure. These days, we just go disruption. But what kind of role does technology actually play at all in this great transformation will become the topic of our podium discussion. I just want to tell you a bit about our house and our approach that fits well with this question. In the Futurium, we want to actually encourage people to think about future topics and future themes and think about and feel comfortable thinking about the future. And we mean different questions about the future and options of the future, because nobody can actually predict the future. And even we in the Futurium don't have a crystal ball. We would rather stick to Ernst Bloch, the future, and the author of the principle Hope. He wrote that the real genesis starts when society and existence becomes radical. That means we need to get our roots and grab our roots. He continued to write that the root is always the work, the people that change things, and the people that do that. To put that in summary, Bloch said, they have the potential to change that we're constantly looking for. We only have that in ourselves. We have to have courage to be autonomous and think about utopia without turning off our critical thoughts. We need to be prepared to make mistakes and forgive our mistakes, because that's the only way that we learn. And we forget this a lot. We also need to be pragmatic. We'd rather do 80% quickly than wait for the 100% that will take forever, that may never come. I know that in Germany, at least, it's not always the easiest thing for us to do, but that's the only way that at the end of everything we'll actually get anywhere. We need to be a visionary and a pragmatician. We try and do all that in the Futurium, and we call ourselves a place of hope, and that's what we want to be, because we don't want to confuse optimism with naivety. And this approach is also, since we opened this house 4 years ago, 2 million people have actually visited us, and even in this year, it's been over 750,000. Our experience in this house, we see 3 different types of program columns. So we have exhibitions where we show different future approaches, and the technician in the forum topics are then part of the discussion up to a pub quiz that have been heatedly debated. And then the Futurium lab, there we have the educational program with all the different programs for old people and young people, and digital education program, our education program that we have only just published and opened to the future public. In order to actually implement all of that and work independently, we can only do that thanks to the 15 different people that finance us, especially the government. Especially, thank goes to the Infineon Aggie that actually has been on our side for 15 years, and that's is especially they've actually made this event possible as part of their Tech for Sustainable Future, and I know that this is something, Mr. Uschitz, that really lies that you're really passionate about. Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that only if we can actually trust in our fantasy and believe in our ability to fantasize about things, that's the only way that we will actually be able to make a sustainable future. And with that said, I would like to wish you an inspiring evening.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Stefan Bratt, visionist. And we're going to be pragmatic in the next hour. My name is Claudia Reiterer, and I'm going to be the red thread in this event today. And I would also like to welcome all of you in the name of Infineon and in the name of Futurium. Henry Kissinger, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and Peace Nobel Prize winner, died today, as we all know, aged 100. And one quote of him says that it's an attribute that enables the spirit to overcome many hindrances in history and not to look down, but to take them as a challenge to overcome these hindrances and obstacles. So it means to build a gap, a bridge between economy and ecology. And how does this bridge have to be designed? How strong does it have to be? How wide does it have to be so that people can cross it and society at all? And today we have people from politics, from sociology, from technology and science, and from practice, all united here on this panel to answer this question. I would like also to welcome the audience here today, but also all people outside in the live stream. You have the possibility to ask questions. Please don't get annoyed with me. I try to answer your questions here. You have a QR code for those in the audience here. You find it attached to your seats. So let me welcome my guests today, but to ask one question right at the beginning. And I would like to ask you to give a short answer. Please welcome with me Robert Habeck, Vice Chancellor and Federal Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Welcome. Mr. Vice Chancellor, never-ending growth in a limited world is what people say is not possible, but economists say, yes, we can have green growth. I say the last one, to give a short answer. That's the plan for all of you. That was just one word. Well, if it has to be short, honestly, I'm really not used to that. Well, I can give a longer answer as well. Well, sociology, Professor Jutta Allmendinger, she's the president of the Science Center Berlin and Social Science Center and professor at the Humboldt University of Berlin. You have noted for a long time that there's a drift in society, a gap. And if we don't look here that society is not falling apart more, that it has to be united more, then it is a big issue for the climate change. So how great is the social question here? Huge. I really like that. Less letters. All right, next one. I would like to welcome Mr. Andreas Uschitz, a member of the Management Board and Chief Marketing Officer Infineon Technologies. Welcome. Well, semiconductors are the new gold of industry. I had to look it up. What are semiconductors? How do they help climate change? They're microchips. They can be found in everything that surrounds us. You don't see them very often. You had an iPad on your table before, and only a few know there are about hundreds of semiconductor chips inside. They can calculate, they can compute their microcontrollers, they can convert electricity, or they can smell, they can hear, they can feel. These are the sensors, and all these are chips that are produced or developed and produced in Europe. Professor Michael Sterner, professor for energy storage, hydrogen and renewable energies at the OTH Regensburg, and a bestseller author. And I would like to know from you, is technology the solution or the problem? The solution. That's quite clear. We have wind and sun. These are the best sources for electricity, for energy. We can integrate this into networks, into the grid. We have this grid planning. We have plants that produce hydrogen. We have storage systems. We have solutions. We need a storage strategy, Mr. Habeck. But the system is quite stable. Once it is running, then we can build electric cars and operate them. We can use heat pumps. We can have green gas. The entire industry can become green, green hydrogen, green steel, and so we can solve the problem using technology. So let's talk about the first topic, the industrial hub, Germany. You said it's a year of the industry, and you said in your book, starting differently from here, you quoted Heinrich Kampe, who in his Dictionary of German Language defined the word sustainability, which means what do you stick to if everything else doesn't, you can't get hold to that anymore. So is sustainable policy something that gives sustain to the present, and we need a lot of sustainability. We have multiple crises that are and people are scared of them, and the sustainability in politics in face of the judgment by the Constitutional Court, where 60 billion euros are missing, 17 billion for the next year. So we need many handles to hold on to. And at Markus Lanz, you said that we have a polar star. We need some type of polar star that we can put into our windows. Is this the handle that we can use for technology and industry?
No, it can't be, because the question that I answered so shortly earlier, a second ago, actually represents a kind of longing that people have. We have asked about this, and I think the quote is good that they said at the beginning from Lance Bloch, where it came from the principle of hope. The book ends, is unbelievably difficult to describe, unless for people who actually study philosophy. If you want to sound clever like I do, you just have to read the last side. Everything that shone and from childhood was home. Whoever promises home needs to go back to their childhood, and that is the principle of hope. And it's beautiful and wonderful, but progressive. No one really regressive. No one wants to go back to their childhood, and not even society, because of the idea that everything was better back then is just wrong. But we always like to believe that fits the 90s, and especially the 19th century or the 16th century. So we need, as a society, we need to develop ahead of ourselves. And the principle of modernity is creating new liberties, or indeed expanding the liberties that we have right now. That's the promise that we have, but we always have this longing for stability. And if you develop new liberties and new freedoms, and you do new things, and there's dynamic and change and all this lot, then all the things that politicians say, then it sounds great on a stage, but every day when new laws are created, or new technologies are actually created, or landscapes or cultures change, then it's seen as a threat. But it's possible we can see it as a personal loss better, and that's why it's not enough just as a societal point to say, you know, we're going to keep this stability and the future is technology and everything. It's necessary, and it's important that a society, as a free society, can actually develop itself onwards, and starts with education. If we have to say, you know, we don't want to develop any further, then why on earth should people actually start thinking up new things? Why should there be creative things? We need that, not just in the not just in the area of technology, but we need cultural advancement, societal advancement, new biotopics, new all this lot, and that is what describes a modern society, and is that we cannot do the whole liberty if in a concert we do not have a societal stability, as a cultural stability, as an emotional safety, and all of that is in a time of amazing crisis that we have, is under immense pressure, and that's why technology is a solution. That's true, but it needs a fundament that they can actually dance on, a floor they can dance on. At the moment, it's stable and there, but it's being seen as as fragile, and it has actually been fragile. Fundamental flaw that everyone can dance at. That's how we sociology. That's described. How, is sociology even included in laws or anything? Marginally, I'd say. You know, with Corona, we saw that where we weren't even looked at. You know, especially in educational questions and everything. You know, we actually started speaking about warnings and everything, but in larger commissions and everything, we weren't even present. And because of that, all the prognosis is from the Corona times, we were right, and we are right. So if you look at the differences in education, and you can see all of them and other things, so the mental problems, everything that actually is still present after Corona, we would have thought that sociology is taken a bit more seriously, but we are far away from that. And if I hear that society needs a good foundation, I would say, did we even have that ever? And I'd say no, we never had that at all, because the foundations were very, very different depending on the person, and it was in terms of its stability was different according to the person. So of course we need to actually start doing politics that actually includes all stages of society and levels of society, and I do not see that happening. I agree with that completely. And if we write laws and make laws and draft laws, like for energy laws or anything, or we do support letters for semiconductors, then we do think, you know, I would like to say, then we do start to think about what kind of effect would that have on different regions, who can join in, who can keep up, and everything like that. And they are being listened to, and then all the specialists are actually used. The economical societies and everything. We need to actually go and ask sociologists and say, what's this going to do with Rhineland or the Lausitz? We don't do that so far. The societal debate with Marcus Lanz, for example, that we in every day of ministry everyday life, we don't do that, and we actually look down on, because it's seen as, you know, it's not a hard fact. So if they don't come and say loss in income, gain in income, up down, everything, we go, you know, we can philosophize about society, and philosophy is always seen as negative, I think, yeah, because if you think about things, then you're seen as suspicious.
Well then, if you don't have the courage, if you're not brave enough, then you don't make any progress. And I know very well how Lausitz is working, where we have experimental rooms where things can be implemented and can be evaluated scientifically, what is working, what is not working, and whether that would be satisfactory and sufficient. And there's a lot of transformatory potential if we tell the people, yes, this is working, we can do it like this, and then they have the confidence for this transformation and can see their own mindset of transformation. Huge transformations is something that the industry is faced with, and we've heard the Minister of Economy to say that it's about stability. And Mr. Urschitz, when it comes to politics, many of them think just during the time they were voted for. Nevertheless, we have these limitations 2030, 2040, 2050. What does that exactly mean for industry in a practical way? You have two columns here. Usually it is about market share, innovation, but what exactly does have to happen so that companies like yours stay in Germany and don't go somewhere else where it is cheaper? Well, there are several conditions that have to fit together. One of them is definitely, if you look at competitiveness of a location, which includes things like an infrastructure that is working. It also means ecosystems of suppliers. We also need educational systems that produce the number of skilled labor that we need and can provide them. It also includes digitalization that is required to think of a semiconductor plant. All these are factors for location, and they are in a competition on a global level, and also with geopolitical and strategical interest, where other states invest and fund these technologies with huge amounts of money. For example, also the semiconductor technology, they try to subsidize them and to bring them to their own country. And against this background, we need funding in advance, for example, in Germany, and, for example, the European chips sector, the EKIP program, to fund innovation inside the country or inside Europe. These are things that we need. But at the end of the day, if you look at the long term or the necessity of a long-term future perspective, then you have to ask yourself what typically to build such a semiconductor plant, it takes about 5 years today. All the authorization and certificates you need. And so we're making decisions today in our industry to expand our production and to invest billions, which will become effective in 5 or 6 years from now on. And the innovation capacity of our industry depends on that. For example, automotive industry, we have many representatives here today. They really depend on the innovative potential in terms of the electronic cars. It's all about chips and very complex software that can have this future technology, also the decarbonization, and enable these future technologies and all the planning. And when it comes to this local conditions that are only lasting until the next time, until the next election, these don't help, because we have to plan on a long-term level, and we have to transform ourselves to be able to manage this transfer and transformation. Yeah, the same applies to me. Well, I mean, what he says about industry applies also to research and science. We will not get any results from science that are valid for 2 or 3 years. What we need, and they will not bring any results. We need this long tests and experiments, long-term tests. So we need continuity, which lasts longer than just 2 elections. Yeah, where we have to build a bridge. And this long-term decisions, what we hope here from COP 2018, which starts today in the United Arab Emirates. There was the news in the afternoon that Germany and the Emirates are the first ones to create this climate fund with a couple of $100 million. But what exactly people are hopeful that building more or expanding new energies, renewable energies, has to be accelerated much faster until 2030. You have to correct me immediately if I give you a wrong number. We are now with a share of 30% of renewable energies. And in your book, that's how we save the climate. There's a chapter of industry where you say it's the hardest part when it's about decarbonization. What does policy and industry have to do?
The technological solutions are all there. We just need to want to use them. And we have a society and a government that wants to do it. But on the one side, we need a financial change in thought, even in investments in industry at the moment. And the second, we also need to change our awareness in society. And there are two examples. Financial change, for example, I don't think we can actually afford to dance around on our black null. The fact that if the climate, if we invest in future and growth and everything like that. And the second, however, we need to think long term and not just in legislative periods or governmental periods. We need for the industry, we need the financial things to be able to do that. That goes above and beyond the 4 years of a government. And you can see in the photovoltaic things that we added 1.26 gigabytes, and now it's almost by 2 gigabytes. And how did we get together? I actually held a lecture in Regensburg on this and said, look, I looked at your plant here. You've got a huge amount of parks and plants and everything. You've got a half semiconductor company, and there's about 300, 400 employees. And you think, hang on, why don't we do that? And we did a study for you and said, hey, if climate protection with 1.7 or 0 degrees, we need quite a few semiconductors in photovoltaic plants and electromobiles and everything like that. And there's a lot of added value from that. And the economy needs to understand that and go, wow, we are losing ourselves in value and everything. So, the second point that I see is the change in change in consciousness. We are a land of poets and thinkers, and but we don't implement that. We have the German angst and the German fear in that, and we need to turn that into hope. We run around with all this, but E.ON and RWE says, great, this is great. Gas is great, it's wonderful, but we don't need it. Like said, Herr Sterner, it's saving electricity. Why don't we just save that and turn around and put that? And he said, we need e-fuels. I called them e-gas, and it was now e-fuels. We need several solutions all at once for mobility. And putting that in practice, that takes years, like you said, with Siemens, and you have a lecture, and you hear, because of this lecture, we've decided to actually go into electro cars. 12 years later, they then build a plant in Berlin that does 3 gigawatts. Takes a long time, but we need to bring people with us and actually get over the German angst that we all have. Of course, we're very conservative and say, someone says you carry on eating your schnitzel and then keep on for heating on everything, we're all good. So I don't need to change, but we need to, the fact that we might see a chance in all of this, and put a lighthouse up as Christmas. We need to develop this idea for the future and what this can actually make for our future in the country, and see it as something attractive. With the Green, the Green Party that day, I said at the end, imagine we talk about 2045 and we're climate neutral. And it felt really good, and everyone opened their eyes and cried, because that's what we want to do, that's what we want to be. We need to connect it to positive emotions that will pull us into the future, that's a future which is nice and it's great, and it'd be really great if that actually happens, because otherwise, then I'll be out of a job. Okay. So maybe not many people don't know that, but the people watching, Professor Sterner, before he studied, went to university, he's an electrician, because he's actually can see both ideas. Before you actually built solar panels in China by that, and has actually implemented energy-saving laws in China and places like that. Mr. Habeck, Germany is a land of poets, thinkers, and inventors, but not implementers. We know the Energy Reduction Act in the USA, where they say, that less bureaucracy, more speed. Can that be the German solution to that, or what can that also be? So also the plumber is just very, very famous, just like in the 90s. I don't share that, from the perspective of the economic minister, but other areas, we talked about the North Star and everything like that. It's all something to think of, agri-rural society and everything, and work and social. But where we have specific strength is in building machines. building them. People will screw together the cars or screw together the robots or anything like that. The implementation is already strong, and this country is known and famous for the strength of its industry. And with the industry, I don't just mean the huge, great big companies and concerns, but the production. And that's why the implementation case or trap, we shouldn't actually get into that. But we know how many people daily actually use their hands to work, and in doing so, keep the country going and bring additional value into the country that's distributed across the country in kind of a way, and it will actually lead to societal and equality, stability, and doing so to democratic stability. It's different now, though. This looking back is then no longer enough, like you said. Things have changed. Maybe before that as well, but if I say us, I mean the general attitude is not because of the war. The war in the Ukraine started in 2014, and Putin's already started attacking before then. So we should have known who we were dealing with, but we didn't wake up until 2022 when things really started. China is no longer the friendly bench that we sat on. The Americans are no longer willing just to look after us and take our financial means from us. They've already said that it might be a sort of the world has actually accepted the climate neutral technology completely, and so what sounds like an abstract idea, ecology and economy, to actually walk down the path together. And about 12 years ago, we made signs saying there's no or between climate change and climate economy. There's a and. That is our reality now. Now, the time for voting and election statements is come on, because the Americans, for example, have not done much for their production, because they have done much for climate protection. The Inflation Reduction Act is a big one. It's a great tax credit program. It's a tax program to actually build up the green electricity, so electrolysis, semiconductors, windmills, batteries, everything, and they're doing it robustly. And I would say they're not doing VTO compatible, so they're basically sticking a finger up to international fairness. They're calling the German companies and say, hey, look, Germany's got a financial problem, come to us. So it is a radical battle for the future of the industries, also the additional value and also workforce and everything. But we can't really think about that with the US, and I think we need to take that seriously, of course, because of economical safety and robustness of the society, because those are the technologies that don't just create the wealth that we have in the future, but we need to be not reliant on other people delivering us or other countries delivering us, because if we do, we're always dependent on other countries. And in a time where geopolitics it's always being friendly to each other and we're now no longer in that world. And if we don't keep up with that world, then my prognosis is that we will be the one that lose the most. In a country where we no longer have the added value, in the geopolitical country where we're completely dependent on everyone else, and the critical infrastructure, the semiconductors and everything, raw materials are sent all over the place, and you do not keep up with it. We've got the corona. We've managed to have to wear self-knitted masks in corona.
Well, the most important question, you spoke about security. What industry needs is security when it comes to planning and the missing billions. So what can you say to industry? Whether there is this safety or that we get the money somewhere else? Well, what I want to say, industry, that the large projects we have planned, that they will come and they're going to come. The consequence is that we will need to fund this money somewhere, and in a political world where I am, it has to be done from the KTF, the Climate and Transformation Fund. Of course, we have to look into details here, whether we can prolong it in one or the other way, and maybe one other project which doesn't have the hardest definition of climate and economics security, that we don't cancel this and postpone this on a time when we have enough money. And from the central budget, we could have to see how monies can be transferred. But unfortunately, in this legislative period, it will not be achieved because the rules that we have set up in a completely different world when it comes to federalism, the European politics, and also the debt break, it doesn't seem to be contemporary anymore. Yes, the debt break showed its teeth, and on your party day you used the picture that it seems to you as if your hands were tied between your back, while at the same time going to a boxing fight. No, it was exactly this picture I use. And to make technology more resilient, to stay the market leader, what does it require? Well, it requires many elements. And again, talking about the example of the semiconductor factory, we have to look, where are we? What is our position at the moment in the semiconductor industry in Germany and in Europe? Usually people say, yeah, the Americans, they're going to overtake us, they're going to be faster, and if we don't get the monies, then nothing will happen, which is true. But what only a few know that Europe today is leading in 3 of the 6 essential product groups in semiconductor business. We are leading, first of all, with performance semiconductors, chips that are required, for example, to save or to build storage systems for renewable energies, and that's where we are world market leader. 40% of the world market share is produced in Europe. I would say without these performance chips, no electric car would ever work. No wind turbine would work without these chips. The second part is where we are leading technologically and with a market share. It's the area of sensorics. So chips that can feel, see, listen, hear, camera chips, well, regardless of camera chips, but all the other chips required for the sensors. Europe has more than 50% of the global market share. And that's also something what you need also for autonomous driving or smart cities or smart building technology to control the climate. And that's something that we have to do with these chips. And also, microcontrollers is something where we are leading. These are not the machine learning and great brains that we're talking about, smart brains. No, they're small brains, I would like to call them. They're in smartphones, in cars, but also in wind turbines. And they take care that small engines are turning, that's all. But here again, Europe has a market share, a global market share of more than 50%, and a large part of this production is taking place in Europe. The question of resilience, what does it need? We need the support for these industries. We need the courage that I see in politics, but also we need the courage that goes beyond the next elections on European level, but also on German level, to have the infrastructure that we need, to have the ecosystems that we need, but also on the offer side, what can we do to create competitiveness and to be competitive with all the other economies on a global scale. And this is one of the essential factors also to manage and to tackle the decarbonization and the climate change and the climate crisis. These chips are required to progress in this climate change and to manage the transformation. Many questions we have received here. I'm trying to pick 3 or 4 questions. There's a social question here. So I'd like to speak about the next topic, but there's a question, what do you estimate, what is the potential of hydrogen exactly with the hydrogen cell battery for transport, means of transport? Well, I'm a member of the National Hydrogen Council, and as many here see that for private cars is the electronic e-car that made the race. When it comes to trucks, it's a bit different because we don't have the infrastructure yet for e-cars, and if I go through the mountains, in Germany that we have here, then I have to put a power plant next to it. So I think hydrogen might be the solution here for this traffic, this transportation. The problem is that we will have a power to X economy, not a hydrogen economy. We need kerosene, we need methanol for the ships, for overseas shipping. And on this basis, it's going to be working. But hydrogen will be used especially for steel because they don't have any alternative. And again, it's the same. The energy transformation is nothing that is just produced by the Green Party. No, it's about very hard industrial politics. And ThyssenKrupp has 12 square meters. And you tell them, well, there's nothing about climate change and climate protection, then they say goodbye Germany, and has to be scalable. Also in the chemical industry, the entire economic growth and economic strain depends on this. And we shall not cross the river. We have to have long-term investments, and hydrogen will play a decisive role in the transformation of industry, in chemistry and high-value chemicals, but also titanium and aluminium, but also green cement, green calc. We already have all these technologies in place, and so that people, please look at my book, so people think that doesn't work, but it does exist. But hydrogen plays the most imminent role here, important role. And there will be times without any sun and any wind, so you need a backup, you need a power plant strategy that we have already, and I hope it will be implemented in short time. So that's the thing about hydrogen. Professor Almendinger, artificial intelligence, can it help resolve the climate crisis? I have to go back here because I didn't say things for a long time. First of all, I don't actually know why it is all about this German angst. There's no empirical basis for that. And the more often you say that, the more it is transposed to the people. That's my private thing. Well, private. I'm going to represent science here, so private experience is something that can only be used in an aggregate form. But if you look at Bavaria, how the election went, it's all based on the fear of change. But now you might ask yourself why that is. And if people are listening to me, most would say, apart from those who are present here in this room, would say, what are they talking about? How does it affect myself? And social change requests that people feel that they are on board here. And communication is quite difficult. And if I'm listening to you, I think that people think they could not be a part here, but it doesn't have anything to do with German angst. It has to do with a lapse in communication or lack of communication, maybe. And now I'm sitting here in the center. Why I'm sitting in the center, and I can tell you why exactly, because science is at 80% when it comes to confidence in science. Economy is about 30%, politics maximum 10%. So altogether, I am absolutely eligible here. And we have learned quite a lot because many people told us that we are not able to communicate, that we are in a unicorn tower, and we completely changed in the scientific communication. Sorry. And it impacts also people, so that you have to go through a tunnel here because they think it's getting better here later, and you can create this atmosphere. And I think this cannot be done with a debt break. What we have to do, we have to invest in education, and we have to do it now. Otherwise, the situation will be even worse in 5 years' time. And the general education is all this, what we talk about, vocational training and further training, but also the funding of our universities. It all decreases if we break here at this point and don't do anything. And I think we should learn from this, that we take persons on board, that we educate them in a way that they have a feeling for themselves, that they have confidence in themselves, and that they can go this way and can understand this way. And now I'm going to answer your question about artificial intelligence.
With the artificial intelligence, that actually assumes that I have my personal intelligence anyway. You can't just give someone artificial intelligence to someone who can't write or read or anything like that. And there's 30% of the functional people in the country who cannot read or write. You know, and that's a male problem. 30%, 30%, yes. You know, if we think about the class design and everything, and, you know, you're going to get the piece over the entire publication. So not just people in school right now, but of the entire population, 30%. Everyone in the ninth grade at school. Everyone in the 9th class, not the entire population, just those who are in the 9th grade at school. But, you know, we know that. So I've spent a long time, I've worked for the employment agency as well, that, you know, that it's a lot more difficult for people like that to send someone back to school and say, go and learn to read, than someone actually do that. You know, we're really, really bad. We have the legal framework for that, but we don't have the infrastructure to actually fight this. And in the schools, exactly the same. You know, I still haven't got to your artificial intelligence questions. Yeah, but the personal intelligence, you know, is great that I can actually start to answer. You know, artificial intelligence can help us, but it can't substitute the basic foundation, and that's what we're missing right now in the professional and primary training and education, where we need to see whether or not this dual system, the way that we've started it, does not actually give us the flexibility that we need regarding technological changes that are coming in the world. So now we've got to the next topic. So Naomi, trust. Mr. Minister, you actually mentioned this with the economist and minister of the lender as well. You actually said that trust in the science is so important. It's especially difficult. In your book, you said you quoted Willy Brandt. You know, mainly is we're going in the right direction, but the problem is that the speed that we're going in, the way that you're sitting here right now, everyone's got different speed and different tempos. So science is different tempos, technology is going in different tempo, and society is going in different tempo. We're a bit slower. There's even politicians, or the overall society is going to be similar, but you know, it's extremely difficult to like President Scheer said, that politics doesn't just mean actually going through everyone, asking everyone else and asking what they think of doing the most popular one, but it's about doing the right thing and making that popular. And between these two extremes, it's very difficult to actually get the speed and trust and get people on board. What can politics do to that to make them get on board and trust? I think, you know, the North Star, the polar star thing that we've talked about here, and along with the get better school equality, climate equality, and keeps all of that together. I think that's the strongest interpretation that that's not available, but in the diversity and plurality, maybe regulative assumption, maybe we could just use that way, that we need to decide whether or not we just don't want to just lose ourselves, or whether we want to, if we don't just want to lose, but we want to actually win. And that makes a difference. You know, in sport, you know, you take your exercise, or you do everything, or you go to your football field and you just don't want to lose, and you stop them shooting a goal. But it's a difference in attitude. Politically, I'd also like to say that we're in the kind of situation where we've got to the kind of situation where everything needs to be put on one thing, saying either we're going to try to, the situation as much as the truth is, in a democracy, the truth is not absolute. I'd say the approach is, even in the federal government, is different, the way that we can recognize it. But we need to actually speak our truth, but not in a stubborn idea, but one that we're going to solve this problem. So we don't want to make people feel like they're stupid, but we need to confront them and say, this is what this means, with the clarity that this is my analysis, this is my answers, and this is where I want to go. But that also means being courageous, and this courage, we can create that, and then there are reasons why we can create that. The alternative, of course, you know, we don't describe the problems the way they are, you know, just go through the vegetable patch for everything, or say they might be there, kinda, but our political idea is that we always blame someone else for the fact that they're not being served, they've not served yet. We need to give them the choice. And in a democracy, so the competition see how they decide. If their societal model is the one that we want, politics is only successful when other people are made responsible for the lack of our success. But that can't be the way we want to go. So it's so short-term thought. You know, I've rarely experienced something like that. On the other side, the North Star, the polar side, do we want to live in that kind of society? Do we want to be that kind of society? Do we want to go and work? Do we want to lead a company? Do we want to write a book? Or do we want to try, you know, if we only see success when I've just not made any mistakes. If I, you know, so that means, of course, there's going to be mistakes that are made, and they've done by someone else. If, however, we say yes to that, then we can tell the story a bit differently and say instead of fear and angst, we are proud to be in a generation that has managed to survive all these different crises. And look back in 10 years' time and go, hey, I was part of that. I did my part. I was in my company, you know, in my institution. I worked as a scientist or whatever, and I took part. And I think that's where we need to go. That would be my polar star.
That would also be my point, to overcome this fear. It's effective when it's psychologically, if you become active yourself and you can be creative and have the courage to make mistakes, so that we become a country of those people, of makers. And usually we fail because we are so thorough. It works very well in engineering, but then we don't have the courage and the bravery to. But I wanted to ask you, why don't we have Fridays for Future at the universities? At the universities, it's a huge problem. In electric technology or engineering, 3 people are going to retire in the next years, and only 1 will be there. And they say they want to do something great with climate protection, and they study something else. They don't want to be engineers, and they're feared, and they study feelings. And I'm scared that they pull the plug. So that's when you notice that electricity is the basis for everything. Have you ever been to a Fridays for Future demonstration? Have you spoken with them? I spoke to 60,000 people in Munich, and I have people who studied and went to the last generation and said it doesn't make any sense to stick yourself to the ground. It's better to produce e-cars or heat fuel pumps. I think we have to motivate the young people, and I really liked it at Infineon that you made this survey and said that it is our external communication and our internal communication. We're doing something meaningful because digitalization and decarbonization are the same thing. But also the automotive people say, well, we want to have a climate neutral car, which also means for the steel people that it has to be produced, and then say, how can we finance this? Where do we get the money from? How can we do this? And again, for self-efficiency, if you tell the people, all right, it is fun to produce a solar system and a heating pump, you can see every day how worthwhile it is, how valuable it is, that it's an extremely valuable element. An example from Wackerburg, Chemie Burghausen, there's a wind park, there's an initiative from the citizens where the village says, we don't want to have this wind park, and 80% of these people are working for this chemical plant, and they need this energy in order to keep the plant going. And it's not just about climate protection, it's just about your job, actually, and your future. So it's a job also for the unions, but also for industry, to make it all a joint topic here. And the politics will also do the guidelines, but then we'll go in this direction. Well, I believe we have, in fact, a communication issue here, but I think to onboard all these people, and in ways that climate protection on the one hand and the growth of wealth in the context of this entire transformation to a CO2-free society is not a contradiction, but that they rely on each other. If I speak to my neighbors, then nobody doubts that these climate technologies will be done with microchips and that contribute to workplaces being created in chip industry, but not only there, but also there are also 7 working places per 1 working place in the chip industry that are supporting this other one, and dozens of other industries, for example, system producers and final industries like car builders. So it's quite surprising if you tell people that for each million euros that chips are selling, there's a factor 100 of the value added chain for the applied industries, as for example, automotive industry, solar panels, wind turbines, but also storage systems, grid producers. So it's a huge, huge economic factor, a huge part of the GDP in Germany and in Europe and in the world depends on this, and it creates working places, creates labor, and the transformation will also create employment and creates wealth, and it's part of the solution. So the transformation and decarbonization to a decarbonized society and industry is important. And the target for these people, and to communicate this as a target, which is relevant for everybody, even my neighbor who's talking to me about it. I think this is a task that we all have to fulfill, politicians, but also those working in industry.
I think the sentence you were there was great, but you wanted to say something. Yeah, but that's exactly connects to what I was saying. That means that from here, I did it as well. I read it out the lecture, and I said I'm going to turn my heating on at home, and then they all said, I couldn't do that. So neither do I have hardware or the software or the knowledge to do that. And that, of course, for people is really frustrating. That's why we're doing far too little to actually inform people about how digitalization actually works, and educate them again on background education. Internationally, it's just we're right at the bottom, We don't have a digital education in our schools, We didn't just see that in Corona, we knew that beforehand. So there, as opposed to other dimensions, we have a huge difference between the generations. So we have no Fridays for Future. I think it's just the youth. That's rubbish. So I thought it was the scientists or anything. Yeah. So it goes completely through, all through age groups and everything. And we often do generation conflicts, and we see empirically that we can't find anything. We suddenly stood about differences in generations where they're saying that the balanced budget amendment is something that the youth doesn't want, whereas it's the other way around. The youth is actually against a balanced budget amendment, and their parents are. So the youth actually see we need the education for the future. We need the climate protection for the future. And you said, but education is an orientation for thinking and actions, and that's why the Polar Star was a good idea, because everyone can see that stronger than any compass, So that's the direction. But I want to say one thing. But what I think was so interesting was empirically, I really thought it was differently, with the generation questions. With the last government elections, 55% of the 18% to 19% actually said it's not it's not important topic, where 60% of the over 64-year-olds. That was very surprising for me, and I would have said it's a generation question. It's not, though. I want to answer a couple of questions that are for you, and they're for you, for Mr. Habeck. What duties do you see with companies regarding sustainability?
Well, what I see is what are the duties? What companies have to do? I think there are a number of duties. For example, the reporting duty, chain supply duty, and against the intention of the legislator in the big coalition where we worked this. It was led by the Conservative Party. You should not forget this, that its duties are passed on, which means the big companies, it depends on the number of employees, they forward these questions to their suppliers, and at the moment we have it is quite demanding, so to say. This is the reporting duty. The same applies to sustainability criteria, which will be introduced on a European level. Sustainability reporting that about energy efficiency can be also part of this. And I believe certain data are required, and that's something we dealt with very intensively in our house. That is required by the companies, but also network operator, energy agencies. They all need this data in order to know how to expand the infrastructure. So we need some data, but regularly this duty, the reporting duty, is an expression that you don't make a decision whether it is allowed or not. If human rights are violated, we don't need any reporting duty. We can say exactly this product includes the work of slaves or child work, child labor. That is something we don't want to have here. Full stop. We don't need a report here. That's not what we want to have. So I believe that we can think of more standards to implement, which are according to our norms. And then there's an authority that will read this, and I know it from practice when I was agricultural minister in Schleswig-Holstein. There was an initiative to save the groundwater from other substances, and it was to forbid other substances. Well, it was not clear about hormones, because people are taking hormone medicaments. So how can we do that? We said it's not allowed, it's not forbidden, so we do a reporting duty. So all agriculturalists had to write reports about this, which is not the greatest idea, I think. Well, Germany is not only a country of thinkers, poets, and inventors, but of those who are preparing reports. Well, there's an area where it is required, of course, but we could also say we are not that far yet. We can't forbid it, but then we have an important product chain that is not used anymore. People are getting pregnant, and we can't do this, and we cannot forbid the contraceptives. That's also what you could say, but to say we're doing a report what it is like, this is just lazyitis, political lazyitis, I would call it. And that's something we should not have in the future. Maybe we can have a shorter answer. Semiconductor production uses a lot of resources. So what does Infineon do with these limited resources? Well, we're struggling hard here, and also to make people believe, because the factor human is the most important one when it comes to innovation in the semiconductor industry. So the most talented people make the difference, especially young people, to attract them when they select their university. So to speak about something when they want to study something technical, and to cheer them, and so that it's enjoyable, that might be part of the solution, as the communication strategy of a company must be interesting. Now we see it with an emotional attach, how it has to be done, if possible, so that the circumstances are good. And at Infineon, it was said before, we are a driver of decarbonization, digitalization in this country. This is not only something what people say, it's evidence what chips are doing. And that's something we are telling young people, and that's how we get the resources, and we have an advantage as a company.
The emotionality is a generation thing, though, because most of the people who have a house or buy a new car are older people, and all the younger people that rent a house and rent a car. So from that point of view, it's got relevant. But you work a lot with fear. In Bavaria, I've seen a poster saying that the government wants to kill you and everything, and obviously that means we want to. I met Mr. Söder and put my book in his hand and said, you are responsible for actually selling hope. But if you actually understand the Christian part of your party properly, and if you're old and you say, I'm going to do it for my grandchildren, because there's a grudge about, my grandchildren. And from that point of view, with the industry, we need clear plans and everything, because that optimizes itself on costs of the 2 or 3 generations later, and we need to think about prices that we need to get in. Whereas, like you said, you need a positive idea that we're going to do something more sensible. Sorry, that's what the old people do. What do they do for their grandchildren? What should they do? I can hear a lot of saying, why should I throw away my heating? I'm out. I'm not going to get any kind of loan to get a new one, and if I die, it's ever going to get with you. Yeah, but we don't see that. We don't see that in empirical studies or anything. There's a lot we can talk about there. I don't know about Bavaria. We're not very empirical in Bavaria anyway. And after it worked so wonderful at the beginning, at the end, the questions is. Anyway, I don't want to interrupt you or anything, but if everything had worked so well at the beginning, at the end of this event, what is going to happen in 2033 from your point of view, if we want to be a visionary and also pragmatist, so politically and economically and societally and technologically? I'll start with you. With me, that's great. We would start with the societal with me. I can see a lot from the past and the future, and if we look at the societal as well and how much the climate politics was actually debated 10 years ago, it was huge. Anyone said climate was always a problem. So if we look at today, then it's the topic that actually every level of society and every generation is one that goes there. 90%, no one doubts that climate is the huge problem of the future, much stronger than migration and everything. If I transpose that and say we're going to be positive and a positive attitude, we're going to affect, and we empower the elder people to throw out their heating. It's a question of empowerment. Then I see a very, very great capital coming in, especially if we do more in terms of the requirements, and those are sociologically and educational.
I believe we can do that. We can do the transformation to a CO2 neutral economy and society, in fact. And I feel a lot of this mood that we start something. In the last months, I could see this in various layers of society where people said, I am tired of this darkness. We want to be positive. We want to work on a solution. Please tell us what we should do to get the point. So what is the picture of the future? I think together we have to move in this direction, and we have to go in the same direction, take the same step and the same speed to project this picture of the future and to onboard all the people. 100% renewable energy until 2030 as a polar star, because then the e-cars will be green and the batteries will be green and hydrogen will be green and everything will work with ecological energy. Technologically feasible, it just has to be implemented. 2033, you said, that's 10 years from now on. There's so many things that have been pushed forward, which will have effect after 5, 6, 7 years now. And then we will have the substance, we'll have decarbonized the German society and economy, because everything, including the steel production, the power plants, will be existing then, and they have to generate money, and they will do so in the future. And to finance the schools and the educational system, so that we have a new fundament for society that will be renewable at that case. Maybe not so technical here, because if you look at the Polar Star again, the last book I read before I became a minister was called Basically Good, and it was quite a bestseller at that time. And I remember one anecdote, I think a little bit from my school time. We read Lord of the Flies at that time at school. I think most of you might know that. Most of you children were on a lonely island, and they were saved at one point. And they killed one person, and they created this cult. And Lord of the Flies, I think, is a pig head where the flies are flying, and they became very rough, an atavistic society. And in the book it says that this historic thing really happened. There happened this accident, and the children were on this island, and when they were saved after a few months, they behaved very well and they were very solidaric. This book that was published as Lord of the Flies, this topic book, was completely wrong. In fact, these children supported each other and were very solidaric with each other. So in 2033, I think we have overcome this weak phase and also the democratic weak phase. And we don't run after these people who tell us that we have to be bad people to overcome this crisis.
That's a good closing word. Now just for all of you who are live here in the internet, thank you very much, and I say goodbye for listening so attentively and then also say thank you to every single person on the podium, and goodbye.